groups need facilitators, and it is such an opportunity for each of you to be part of dialogues and to be trained as a facilitator.
큰 박수로 우리 로리 교수님을 환영해 주시기 바랍니다. Please welcome Professor Laurie.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being here. So, this is going to be informal, so I'm hoping that at any point you have a question or a comment that you would just raise your hand and interrupt. This is actually a very important skill in dialogue, which I'm going to talk about. So, my challenge today is to convince all of you that Congo University needs a dialogue program and would like to partner with World in Conversation in that effort. So that's my goal, is to show you, is to persuade you of why I think that's important and needed, and why it is such an opportunity for each of you to be part of dialogues and to be trained as a facilitator. So that's a lot to convince you of, but I think I can do it. So be ready and be skeptical. So I'm going to just say a little bit, very little, about what we do at World in Conversation. We train facilitators and we host dialogues. That's two major things that we do there, and there are others like we talked about just now in research. Training facilitators is what we have been committed to for 20 years of the center and about 10 years before that. And the only reason that I'm actually standing here today to tell you about training facilitators is because what happens with students when they become facilitators, or what happens with humans when they learn the skills and mindset of a facilitator, is profound to me. You walk through the world differently, you interact with people differently, and you have the potential to help people solve their problems in ways that you cannot imagine, actually. So that is why I continue to do this work, because training facilitators is miraculous. And I see young people over and over and over and over through the decades manage very difficult circumstances with their peers in ways that most adults could not, right? So it's very, very powerful work. And so for the purpose of training facilitators on our campus at Penn State, we host dialogues, many dialogues, 25 dialogues a day on average. Currently, those dialogues are all online because of COVID. But the good news about that is we get to work with international students from other universities in the world, and those students get to train with our students at Penn State to become facilitators, and then they host dialogues with our students. So online, we have a student from Mosul, Iraq, and a student at Penn State University, and together they host a dialogue of students, sometimes, in this case, would be from Congo and Penn State, right? So it's very exciting, the conversations that can happen and the relationships that can get built through that. So that's what we're doing at World in Conversation, and we hope that we can partner with your university to do this. So Sam, what is my next slide? So obviously, I think groups need facilitators. In fact, I know they need facilitators because groups are, in my view, what I've seen over time, and think about the groups that you're in, whether it's a family or a working group, groups tend towards being dysfunctional. And what that means is people either divide and they're kind of in conflict with each other. I think this, or we think this, and they think that, or they tend to just go along with each other and just like, okay, we'll do it like this. It's okay. Both of those things are dysfunctional, and neither of those things draw on the most creative, innovative, intelligent aspects of human minds. And when groups are working well together, because they're working with a facilitator, we have opportunities for innovation and collaboration that we would never have as individuals. So groups need facilitators, and I think our social problems need to be addressed through groups that are being facilitated, right? So it's very exciting work, and most people don't know that facilitators exist and can help us to work in really, really functional ways together. So I'm here to do the commercial for facilitators. And this is our picture of a facilitator. See, we have him like him or her, or they, like them, like a superhero, because we think they're superheroes. Sam, what's the next?
Can you just say
Ask it.
like in very simple terms what a facilitator does?
Yes.
To start out.
Yeah, okay, so, thank you. See, interruption, and it'll be better because of it. A facilitator, it does many things. One of the things they do, we say they're like a communication traffic police, right? So they say, can you pause for a second? You speak really easily, and can we let Sam speak right now because he hasn't said anything yet. Or, so you know, we try to make sure that there's equal participation in a conversation. A facilitator does that because they're paying attention to what's happening between people. They're paying attention to body language and pace and tone of the conversation. They're paying attention to themes and subjects and where did the conversation start and where is it going. And so doesn't even matter what people are talking about. The facilitators are paying attention to the process of a group, right? And most of the participants need to be paying attention to what is actually being said. The facilitator is paying attention to how it's happening. And that's where their power is, to be able to interrupt, to stop, to pause, to say, ooh, wait, you weren't understood. This person just got mad because they thought you said something. I'm not sure that's what you said. Could you say it again? And could you wait before you say too much? Is that my phone? Okay. My phone has not rung in about 2 weeks. I'm just curious who this is. Who is it, Sam?
It's Irvin.
My good friend Irvin. That's another story. Okay. So, a facilitator you can think of in some ways as traffic police. I think of them in lots of other ways too. One way I think of them is as a conductor. Imagine an orchestra, right? All of these different instruments, and they all are trying to play the same song, and the conductor knows, wait, we need a little more of the strings. Oh, a little less of that. Oh, a little more of the wind instruments. Oh, a little less of that, right? So a facilitator also does that. So Sam, does that help to start to answer what a facilitator is doing?
Yeah, I think so.
So a facilitator is like also spinning the top, helping the flow of the conversation. And they do this in a lot of different ways. And that's the training of a facilitator, is to practice all of the different ways to intervene in a group so that a group begins to trust you and follow your leadership. But at the same time, you are making sure that you're not leading the group with your ideas, you're just helping the group to work best with their ideas. So that's a whole conversation to have. Go ahead.
So it's useful in families and classrooms?
Yeah, so what we found, this is still my commercial for facilitators, what we find is that when people are trained to be facilitators, they see that the skills of working with groups is useful everywhere, in every profession, whether you're an entrepreneur or a nurse or a physicist or a parent, a child in a family, right, as we all are. These understanding how groups operate and how to intervene in them is extremely valuable because we live our lives in groups, right? And so our students tell us, our alumni tell us over and over again that these skills got them the job that they got, or got them the promotion, or a leadership position, because when you're a facilitator, you just see things that other people don't see. And it's very useful to see those things. So, good? Anybody have a question or want me to slow down and say something again? Yes?
Yeah,
question. You said the facilitators orchestrate the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, could you specify the difference between mediator and facilitator?
Yeah, okay, so I said facilitators are orchestrators and mediator versus facilitator. What is the distinction? I don't think that the distinction is too important. I think facilitators are mediators also. I think that they do more things than mediate, because when we think of mediate, we tend to just think of people in conflict and that we need to help work through that conflict, which definitely facilitators do. But they also are helping people they also help to create conflict. And I think I can just say right now, because this talk is about the problem of collaboration, most times in our groups, in our working together, in our families, we don't have enough conflict. In other words, we don't express what we truly think, feel, and see enough. And so if a facilitator sees too much agreement, they're going to actually look for the disagreement, and that's where it's a little different than a mediator, but very similar territory. So that's a great question. Any other things? Just anything that's coming to mind? Yes?
I'm thinking that the facilitators are really kind of great teachers as well. That's not their intention, but I think that will be one of the results, because I think good facilitation kind of teaches people how to be better members of a dialogue, how to solve conflicts. And one of the reasons that people try to avoid conflicts is because once conflicts arise, they don't really know how to solve those conflicts, and they don't want to be in those situations of conflict in a conversation. So I'm thinking that good facilitators are good members of a conversation, but they can also act as good teachers for other people.
Yeah, I want us to say that out loud. What you're saying is good facilitators have the potential to be good teachers, not just good members of a group, but good teachers. Because, and I do think good teachers facilitate learning. They don't necessarily tell people what to think, they help them to think themselves, right? And we're actually going to talk about that this afternoon, Sam and I, when we talk about teaching. So thank you for that. I'm going to move to the next slide. Okay, so, and this is my favorite parable ever. So I'm sure many of you know the parable of the blind scholars and the elephant. And it's basically, I wish this had been my creative vision, but it has, let me just say what I see when I see this. First of all, what this parable tells us is that the humans have an ancient problem. The ancient problem is that we all are faced with reality. In this case, the elephant represents reality, or something that's true in front of us. And the humans are like blind scholars in the face of reality. They're very intelligent, but they're blind to the whole of reality. They all only see and experience a piece of it, right? And so in the parable, we have the person who thinks reality is like a rope. Reality is like a wall, right? Reality is really like a tree, etc., etc. And they're all right. They're all right. But they only see a part of the reality. They only can see what's true, a piece of what's true, right? And this is an ancient problem for us, because what winds up happening is we fight over what's true, right? And we say, and I don't know if you hear this here in Korea, but in the United States, we often are saying, we just have to agree on the facts. If we could just agree on the facts, then we could make decisions. We will never agree on the facts when you realize that we all have different facts, not alternative facts, meaning if it's a snake, it's not a tree, but actually the facts, if we put them together, they make sense of the bigger picture. They even show us the bigger picture. But we're all blind scholars, just seeing the world the way we see it. And eventually, I think, in society, we wind up making groups that are fan people, right? Or spear people, or the people who only see the snake, and they are very sure that life, the reality in front of them, is a snake, and they're gonna march against the people who think it's a tree, right? I mean, this is silly. It sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I mean, that's why I love this parable, because I think it tells us so many things about the problems that we have in solving our problems. You know, so we make problems because what's missing here, I mean, what this is also giving us is a solution, right? The solution is obvious. The blind scholars need to talk to each other. That's it, right? They need to just get together and pool their facts. We say pool, put them together, all their facts, add them together, and get a bigger picture of reality. This is why groups can be so powerful, because you have all of these minds that are having little pieces of reality. Each one of you in this room, the reason that I don't spend much time talking like this to people is because I know you have as much to say, each one of you have as much to say as I do. So why would we all be listening to one person? But in groups, we have the potential to put all of the pieces together, right? But what happens in groups is we tend to either divide ourselves or go along with a leader or one idea that's more dominant than another idea in a group. And then we fail to see the whole picture. So what the parable doesn't show us, and then I'm going to ask my volunteers to come up here. What the parable doesn't show us is a facilitator. Because these people will never talk to each other meaningfully without a facilitator. Somebody to bring them together and say, yes, I know, you think it's a wall, right? Can you describe that wall? Okay, and actually, of course it's a wall to you, because you're standing up on that ladder. That's what you see. But here's this other person over here to the east, and they see it's a rope. And so instead of arguing, dividing into teams, actually build the world together. Build the vision of what's happening together. And if you can think of in the smallest things on campus, where we have, it should be like this versus this, to the largest international issues. Sam and I gave a talk the other night saying about how this small group work applies to the humans, addressing climate change. As big and as small as the issues are, this parable gives us so much information about what we could do. But we need facilitators to do it. So I'm going to actually ask the volunteers to just join me for a minute before I see if there's questions. So do you want to all just come up on the stage, because it is getting kind of lonely up here. Thank you for joining. I told them that it's very low stakes. They don't have to have any right answers, so they're just indulging me, right? So before we go forward, are there questions, comments, thoughts? I know there are. So is there anybody that is willing to share something that they're thinking, something that's connecting for them? Ah, yes, wait. I see your shirt, but I was going to call you by your shirt, but okay.
You said it's really important to have a facilitator in every group, but I do notice that there are some people that are kind of too timid, or kind of they don't always want
They don't always want to be noticed.
So
I don't know why your mic just doesn't want to work.
So do you think it's important to
take turns so that everyone, I'll just shout.
Okay, shouting is
So
good.
that everyone has a chance to become a facilitator, or do you think there's a certain property that a facilitator needs?
That's a really, really good question. In terms of the timidness in a group, There's always people who I say are good observers, like they spend time listening and watching what's happening, and they're usually really useful in a group setting because they're seeing things other people aren't seeing. And so it does take sometimes some more work to excavate what they're seeing, but it's necessary to do so. So that's a very important role in a group. I do think that there are people who are more easily facilitative, and so we tend to look for people who are either really interested in being a facilitator or just natural facilitators, right? Just sort of like there's people who are natural musicians. Anyone can learn to play an instrument, but there's certain people who are just music is flowing through them. So yeah, we do tend to look for, I was just saying this morning with Sam, people tend to be a little more focused on relationships, more extroverted a little bit. Introverted people also can do this work, but looking for people who just like want to understand. You know, they don't necessarily have to stand on one idea, but they want to understand what other people want to understand. So things like that, I could say more, but there definitely is a profile of someone who would be more natural at it. But I think most of us can learn the basic work of a facilitator. So, but there's, you have to have a certain kind of mindset. Actually, let me say this right over here for a second. Something that happens with a facilitator when they're in the middle of conflict or a difficult issue, which is really why they're there, is they're not on anybody's team. This is one thing we learn. A facilitator is on everybody's side. Now I'm going to use my models here. Like, I'm on this person's team, this person's team, this person's team, this one's team, and this one's team. So what that means is I'm on nobody's team. And a lot of times what that means is I feel like a traitor, right? Because I really like you, and I really like you too, but in some moments, I'm gonna challenge you, and I'm gonna support you, because what needs to happen, or maybe I'm gonna challenge this person, and it's gonna feel like I'm no longer on her team, because facilitators can't be on anyone's team. They're on the team of the group. They wanna do the best work. They want the group to do the best work, right? So anyway, that's just another part of the profile, to be able to hold the tension between people and not collapse and feel like too much of a traitor, but it's a very deep part of it. So thank you for that. Any other question before we continue? Yeah.
Are facilitators playing a role as a leader? So like you can consider them as a leader, because I think leaders also bring the team members together. So how I can compare with leader and
So how is a facilitator a leader? Facilitators are guiding a group of people to a better way of interacting with each other, so they're definitely leading by guiding. The way that they're not leading is saying, we have this problem, and here's how we're gonna solve it. Like, I'm not gonna tell you how to solve it, I'm not gonna tell you what the right answer is or the best answer, or I'm not gonna pick out one of their perspectives and say, okay everyone, let's follow this perspective. I'm gonna continue, it's really like servant leadership, where I lead by serving your best interests. And I don't know what your best interests are, and I will tell you that in our world, in our most serious conflicts, people want, and many people who call themselves facilitators are really people who are trying to change people's minds to the way they think, and they call it building awareness. Well, I just need to let you know about my people and what our experience is, and you need to just believe what we're saying. And there's places for building awareness, but the work of a facilitator is not to have a particular perspective that they're pushing. And that's what makes the leadership facilitator it makes a facilitator a servant leader, right? It's like, well, I'm gonna help you work out your problem, and you're going to come up with that, not me. I'm not gonna tell you what the solution is, as if I know, right? So anyway, I just want to do something here for a moment. I'm just going to change gears slightly, but we're staying always with this idea that people are only seeing a part of reality, okay, of what is true, okay? You're with me on that? So here's just group of people, random humans, right? And so on our campus, on this campus, we want to get some of these random humans together, and there's lots of purposes, right? But this is what we want to do. So I'm going to just ask you to put yourselves in a circle for just a minute, just like as if we're going to have a dialogue. It doesn't matter if your backs are to the audience. Okay, if you were truly in a dialogue, we would close the circle, right? Because it's very important that people can see each other easily. Obviously, it's different if we're online, but the idea is always the same. There's lots of rules for when we do this online. So what's great about dialogue and putting people in a circle, and people who are facilitators, we love circles. This is just the way it is. It's probably, when you think of a dialogue, you even think of people in a circle. The beauty of the circle is that you all have equal access to speaking, right? When you look at each other, nobody's in the lead here, right? Everybody is on equal ground, is the intention. And so everybody has the right and the ability to speak, so to speak, right? The problem that we've understood over all these years of doing dialogues, the problem with this is that the blind scholars, because remember, they're blind scholars, the blind scholars are not in equal positions, right? The blind scholars are all in different positions, and that is partly why they see things that are different. So when we put people in a circle and we say, okay, let's talk about X, let's talk about climate change, right? This circle confuses us. The circle even confuses the facilitator, because we assume, okay, well, this is it. They all have an equal voice. They all have an equal say. But we forget that this is what's really true. What we say is, you can move the slide, Sam, is they have different sociological addresses, right? That's a big, that's too academic of a word. But basically what it means is they all have a different position in relationship to, let's just say, climate change. It's too big, but we'll just say climate. So each of them is positioned around climate change in a very different way. So they see different things. And if we don't center their differences, we make their differences the priority, then we don't access all of the brilliance between them, because, one sees water, another sees weather, another sees pollution, another sees whatever, right? And we need all of that. And so when we're in a group, the facilitator has to really make sure, am I seeing from this perspective? Are we seeing from this perspective? So we ask people in our dialogues questions that help us to position them in their sociological address. And many people think, how many people know that social identity? Does everybody know that word? What is your identity, right? Race, ethnicity, religion, gender, right? All of those things. This is not identity. This is not defining who I am. This is the matrix of factors that position each person in a different place on the planet, right? Whether it's geography, whether it's language or languages spoken, ancestry, abilities, all of those things, but not necessarily the ones they identify with, because there's plenty of parts of each of you that you want. Someone may say, I'm an artist, I'm a female musician, right? And I'm from Korea and whatever, but there's 10 other things that they also are that make them see something in the world that other people don't see. So anyway, this isn't identity, it's literally your address, and that matters to us, okay? So before a facilitator does anything, they are trying to learn what these individual people see. And what we're most interested in is actually not empathy. So I just also want to say that. Not understanding, not empathy, not actually standing in each other's shoes. What we want to do is get you to say as clearly as you can, what do you see from where you stand? What do you see from where you stand? Not how do you feel, not what do you think, not what conclusions you've drawn or what your ideology is. Literally, what do you see? Because when you start to tell us what you see, and then you start to tell us what you see, and we actually have a lot to work with. And anyway, there's a lot more. And a facilitator is paying attention to that and drawing that information out of people so that we actually know where the blind scholars stand so we can start to put the pieces together. This sounds like a lot of fun, right? And they haven't even said anything yet. And this is all that you have to think about. Okay, Sam is telling me, he already whispered this in my ear. He said, slow down. And now he just said, you're from the East Coast of the US, you talk really fast. So I'm really sorry about that. But I get excited about this. Okay, so should I say anything again? Okay, so should I go to the next piece? Okay, we're going to transition. Now remember, you don't have to have any answers, okay? You okay? But we do need a microphone. So this is just an exercise that we do when we're training facilitators. And we're not going to do the whole exercise, but I think you'll get the point pretty quickly. Okay, so we have this object, and like reality, we don't know really what it is. So you have to take on the idea, whether you know what that is or not, that you don't know what it is. Okay? So anyway, this is one of our exercises in training. And so did you all see that? Could you in the back see? You were supposed to take it back there, but you didn't.
Well, it doesn't matter what it is.
It's true what you did. But Sam had the idea that he wanted everyone to see it so you could see what we were doing. So, and we don't usually do this with an audience. You know, when we're training, everybody that's in the training is in the training. There isn't an audience. Okay.
We don't know what that is.
Okay. Does anyone? I'm not going to ask that question. So for this exercise, we just want each of you to ask a question that would help you to figure out what this thing is, assuming, and really, like, just pretend that this is alien something or other. What question could you ask that would help you to learn more about what you need to know about what that is? Right? Does anyone have a question about what I'm asking?
Is it a human?
Is it what?
Is it a human?
Is it human?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. You're on. Okay, so that's the question. Is it human? What's your question for this?
What does it do?
What does it do? Perfect.
Is it alive?
Is it alive?
Can we use it?
Can we use it?
What is the color?
Pardon?
Color, what is color?
What is the color? Go one step further. Look at that thing and say, what do I need to know about it to help me know what it is? One more. Because we're going to go around again. Huh?
You think I like it?
Would you like it? Okay. Is it something I would like? Go ahead. Just look at it.
How does it feel?
How does it feel?
Can we eat?
Can we eat it?
Is it everlasting?
Is it everlasting?
Oh, it's so hard. Do you have these things in your house?
Just somebody has this in their house.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So just really quickly, what are you noticing as you're hearing each other's questions? Just anything. Anybody, can you just say what you're noticing as you hear the questions? What? No, just what are your observations? Wait, pass it right here. Yeah. What are you noticing?
Well, I think it is not everlasting
Mhm.
now because Of course, I don't know what it is, but I think nothing is everlasting, so yep, the answer is no, I think.
So that really wasn't your question.
It wasn't.
Wait, say it again.
It wasn't.
It was not your question. It was just a question. Ah, that's great. Okay, how about another observation of this process?
Can I pass the mic to you?
Can you pass the mic?
Yeah.
So no observation. Just what do you see? No, anything you say is fine.
I think it's hard. It's hard.
What's hard?
The thing, I don't know.
Oh, this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're just making the observation about this thing. Okay. How about you? One more observation. Just about like what's happening here as you're asking questions.
Well, for me, I focus on the capability of this item. So I asked a question, what does it do? And thereby I can guess, it's just me, but I focus on the capability of certain items. That's it.
Okay. I really want to ask every one of you what you're noticing, but I'm going to just say some of the things that I'm noticing. There's nothing, every group that does this, there's different things that we see. So I'm not looking for the right answer or looking for the aha moment, but a couple of things. One thing that I'm noticing is that some of them are looking at each other, right? Like, am I saying the right thing? Wait, how does what I'm saying fit with what they're saying? It would be good to actually just write down your questions before, but this is what happens in a group, right? One thing that happens in a group is that people are in relationship to each other, and so they're trying to understand what's the right thing to do, right? And I gave them a vague, not too vague, but vague task, and they're not fully sure what to do with it. But so anyway, some of them are looking to each other for direction. Another thing is just the different questions that they asked, right? They're just from seeing them they're looking from different angles. And another thing is, you're like, that's not really my question. It was a cool question, but it really wasn't my question, because I don't really believe anything is everlasting, right? So you're dealing with all of these kinds of things in a group, one being, do I really trust what Laurie's doing right now? Am I really going to just dive in here and actually follow her and say, let me ask a really important question to figure out what this thing is, because it's just an activity, right? So we're dealing with that in a group. Like, how do we sink down into an experience and really trust what's happening? It takes time. And people who are facilitating, first of all, you have to trust each other. And then you have to trust the process and the facilitator. That all takes time. And until you do trust, it gets in the way of us being able to really figure out what that thing is. Like, is it going to kill us? You know what I mean? Should we be afraid of it? Who knows, right? If we don't know what it is, there's some really important questions that we need to ask quickly, right? But that's not the point. The point is just getting a sense of what happens to people in a group. Or in the case you were like, I'm not sure what I'm observing, right? Like, so I'm not, and I don't know yet. As Laurie, were you feeling pressured or shy, or did you just not notice anything yet, right? These are things that we have to keep asking ourselves in a group. So we have to devote ourselves to the people in a group to find out, to get to a place where this group really can start working together creatively. Did you have a question, Tim?
Can you ask, you have 1 minute to ask 30 questions on that. Can you do that?
Can we do?
You. Can you just demonstrate how many, there's an unlimited number of questions you could ask.
How about we do it?
Okay, go ahead.
Let's try it. Let's take 30 seconds, a minute.
1 minute.
We're gonna all do it, okay? We're gonna try to ask as many questions as we can.
For each one they do, you do too. Because you're gonna go fast.
Oh, everyone was
What? Everyone's under the gun. Okay. Why do you want us to ask as many questions? Okay, Sam, as a teacher, he wants us to come up with as many questions as we can come up with. And you'll see that questions are a really important part of facilitating. So that's part of this. Is it sharp? Really fast.
Yeah.
We're failing.
How should we treat it?
Okay.
How should we treat it?
Yep.
Is it safe to touch it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it cold?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the lotion?
Is it heavy? Does it smell?
How much is it?
Okay.
Can it move?
Do you need electricity to use it? Is it glowy?
Is it what?
Shiny?
Is it shiny?
Is it useful to students?
Is it useful? Sam, I'm failing. Well, can I use it? Can I step on it? Can I? How much does it weigh? Are we at 1 minute yet? We're at 1 minute. He wasn't even using his timer. You just wanted us to look like idiots. Okay. One of the things so thank you for that. One of the things that is most important to the training of a facilitator, we always say, is developing authentic curiosity, right? And so we play with this idea because one of the things that gets in the way of our curiosity is what we already know, right? I was talking about some of what the group dynamics of like, should I say this, should I say that? Well, there's that. But what gets in the way of our curiosity as humans is what we already think we know. So we know this isn't going to hurt us. We know a whole bunch of things about it already. And so it stops us all from being able to ask really good questions and be really curious because we already think we know. Which, if you think about the social world and what you and your people, your family, your friends think is true, what you think is true gets in the way of being able to ask and to facilitate by asking really good questions of people, because you'll think, well, that's already obvious. You won't even know that's what you're thinking, but your assumptions will get in the way of a beginner's mind, right? How many people know that term, beginner's mind? Anybody? No? Beginner's mind is that empty mind of where you enter a situation or you see something you've never seen before, and your mind is clear of assumptions. It's the beginning. It's like a child encountering a butterfly for the first time, right? Or a snake or mud. It's like, oh, what is this? Can I step in it? Can I touch it? All those things. That's a beginner's mind. And that's ideally what a facilitator is training themselves to do, so that whatever we are talking about, I can ask questions that take us outside the box. And when we're dealing with conflict and social problems in life, we have to get outside the box, or else we can't solve things. And that's what a facilitator is trying to help us all do, right? So that's this exercise where we just ask questions of this object. It's really meant for us to just start a conversation about the ways that our curiosity is limited. One, by just the social context, or just by our own, what we already know, right? Thoughts about any of that? Okay, we have the same person asking what you're going to ask for everybody. Go ahead.
In a situation like that, would the facilitator not ask any questions then? Would they just be like pointing out people who haven't spoken yet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, facilitators ask questions to engage people and bring them into the conversation. But yeah, and this is an exercise, but me as a facilitator, I wouldn't do it. I would just help the group to do it. Yeah, so my job is to serve the group, but not to participate. And actually, this is another piece. When students from your university join our dialogues, you learn a lot about dialogue and facilitation by being a participant. So a big part of our training is that our student facilitators are in dialogues, because you learn a lot about what is necessary from a facilitator by being a participant. So some of you will just have the opportunity to learn just by participating with us. So I feel like you're gonna
I have a question.
give me a direction. Okay.
So one thing I noticed was that, so he was really easy to speak, and she was much shyer. Now, how do you work with that as a facilitator? Why in that situation as a facilitator, how is your job really important?
Yeah,
Talk about that.
absolutely. And in this, in the exercise we did, we were just going around one at a time, and that's kind of equalizing. But if this was a dialogue, absolutely. I don't know where it would go, so I don't want to point you out. But you might be, as someone who spoke easily, someone who, like you're asking questions easily, would be continuing to speak. And if there was no facilitator, you would sort of become the dominant voice maybe in the group, and then you would never speak because he's speaking, so why would you, right? And maybe you would speak a little less. So yeah, I would be just saying, hey, wait, before you say that, can we just go back to you for a moment? You weren't sure what your observation was, but what were you thinking while we were doing this? Might be something that I would do. So okay, you don't have to have an observation, but what else? But what do you have? Because you're here, you're awake, you're engaged, and so I would just spend more time here. And there's also a limit to that, right? Like I wouldn't spend all my time because then that's not fair to the other people in the group. But that's definitely a kind of intervention that would make a difference because in most cases, you will participate. I mean, the vast majority of cases, when I spend time with you, we're gonna hear your brilliance. And and most people will be surprised, like, oh, she didn't seem like she had anything to say, but she really does. And actually, she just didn't think maybe that it was relevant, but oh my God, thankfully we asked her and she went out over here and it was the most important thing that we heard. That often happens in a group. And when I'm at work and working with staff, if somebody says, who hasn't spoken, we're figuring out something that we're gonna do, and they say, oh no, I'm good. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? What do you mean you're good? Well, did you have something? Yeah, but we don't need, no. Oh, as soon as, nope, what do you see? I don't want to throw the whole group off, they would say. I don't want to throw it, let's just make the decision. No, because they see something and it matters. And it's going to make what we do better when we consider it. And we bring it into the center of the circle, I will say, right? So anyway, thank you for that. Any thoughts about that? Yeah. Wait for the mic.
Ask this question. So you were talking about the social relationships, and obviously theory is all students, but I'm thinking that, and as Sam pointed out, one student was speaking very freely, and another student was pretty shy, and I think those are pretty much what I call like horizontal differences in terms of social relationships.
Yep.
But I'm thinking, so let's just imagine that group is one of them is a boss, is my boss.
Absolutely, power.
And we wanted the power status. So I'm thinking that, and even the power status between the facilitator and the group, I think that in our culture, speaking from a social and a cultural perspective, I think in our culture, the facilitator would tend to become more of the leader. I mean, that's not the intention of this conversation, but so diffusing that power status between the facilitator and the group, as well as diffusing the power status among the people in conversation, like how do you do that, Laurie?
That is the most important and profound question, and everything that the work that we're doing is built on. So I would say, though, that the facilitator is an agent of power, but they're using their power. They have to use their power for the group's purposes, to actually empower others, to disrupt the process where, we see the power center is right here in the group already, and they're actually trying to pull the power and hand it off to someone else. And so I think the best facilitation moves, as we say, are invisible. So if the facilitator is making themselves very obvious in the group, they're actually not doing the work. Because I think what they're always doing is sharing power. They're basically disrupting what would just happen normally. So of course, with any kind of power imbalance, that's what they're doing. The tricky part of that is that when people, you might be able to, we are able to create a kind of equality and equity in a group, in this microcosm of society, but it doesn't change what people go out back into the world with, right? So I'm still a woman, somebody else is still from the Palestinian territories, or someone else is from here, or is this or that. And so this is actually a whole other thing to talk about, but in our work, what we've come to is what we're saying is beyond dialogue. And so if people are just talking, we feel that those power relationships are just reproduced, even though we might shift it here. And we do, and it makes a difference. So what we're doing is using those relationships to solve problems. And when we're actually solving problems together, then we actually have the opportunity to do something different that people take out in the world with them. And so that's the whole body of work that we're addressing now. So that is like the key is how do we take the social relationships in the world, equalize them here, but then have that be meaningfully met in the world. And it doesn't just happen with a dialogue. But it's a start, it's humanizing, it does create empathy. If people do expand how they are seeing issues, and in a college setting, in a university, I would say that our mission is to expand how we're thinking. And when you're in a group setting like this, and you really have to be able to articulate your own view and really hear other people's, that's to me, core part of higher education. So I think there's also just a real relevance to a university. But anyway, that's a great question. Anyone else who hasn't shared anything? Yeah, someone has to get you up. Sam, do you have a mic?
What happens if there is two facilitators in a group? Should they just work together or kind of choose one to lead the way?
That's good. You said it already? Okay. So what about two facilitators? This is a beautiful question because at World in Conversation, we always have two facilitators. It's only a mistake when there's one facilitator. So that's a whole other body of work of how do you work with another facilitator in this really complicated field of relationships. And so we do spend a lot of time talking. Well, facilitators are always having they're working together and then they're debriefing. What did we do well? What could we do differently? And there's a lot of conflict between facilitators because they see things differently. They have different instincts. And it's really, really important to have two facilitators because they see different things and because they have different instincts, right? So it's a whole part of the work that is really important. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I tend to talk about a facilitator, but we always work with two. Because also when people are in training, I might not know what to do in a moment. I've lost track, and then the other person hasn't, because they're seeing something else. And so there's most of the time, it's a real supportive relationship, but always two people, and usually from different sociological addresses. So that, everybody has a different sociological address, but what is obvious about people, a man, a woman, different color, all kinds of things. So people know that they're working with people that are having a different perspective. Yeah?
So that with two, and if there are more than two of everyone has and when there are more than two of everyone has the natural role of one to facilitate.
You're saying, are there ever more than two?
Yes, or one that happening that everyone naturally feel the role of facilitating instead of saying what he is thinking itself. Can that be an issue?
You mean people just acting like the facilitator?
Yes, without being it, or that everyone is acting like it?
Yeah, our facilitators love when the participants in their groups take on some of that facilitation role. And what does that mean? That means you would actually ask him a question, because we want people interacting and talking to each other, and eventually the facilitator can step back and just see the group operating. So we love it when participants start doing that, or like, wait a minute, what did you mean when you said such and such? And we don't rely on the facilitator for that. But if someone is only facilitating, right, and they're never saying, well, here's what I see, or here's what I think, then the actual facilitator would be like, but wait, you're asking a lot of questions, but what do you think, and how do you feel, right? So yeah, so those ways of interacting we love, but there's something that gets lost for a participant if they never are sharing their view, right? And so we really want that. So it's a great question. Anything? Yeah.
Before you talked about the looks that the participants
Gave each other during the conversation.
Say that first part again.
Before you spoke about the looks that they gave each other during the conversation, and so I was thinking during the Zoom meetings, like how do you analyze how people like react to each other, and especially like ask for help by the looks they give each other?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I thought, how are you all doing, first of all? You all right? We're gonna ask you a couple questions in a minute. So I love that you're here, so we can keep referring to you, but I'm like, wait. So I thought that we started doing video dialogues in 2011, so a really long time ago. And Sam was very interested in doing that because we first had the opportunity to do dialogues with students in the Gaza Strip, in the Palestinian territories, and that was a very, big honor to be able to do that. But I said no. Well, I didn't say no to doing it, but I thought we can never do this because it is so interactive, and we really pay attention to body language and such. And I was wrong. Very wrong. One thing that happened is we came up with ways of interacting so that our body language would speak more. So for example, one of the Palestinian students was telling us about a very tragic experience of war. And our students at Penn State were like completely engaged and feeling what he was sharing. And he ended his story, and he said, "Can you hear me, Penn State? Did you hear me?" And we were saying, "Oh my God, of course we heard you. We just are feeling with you." And so in that moment, we realized that we made an agreement that we would just put our hands on our hearts when we were feeling something. And that was many years ago, and our video experiences have gotten better just because of technology. But anyway, we started to do some things like that, and we realized that we could have experiences with people that we would never otherwise have if we had to be in person. And what we also learned is that in Zoom world that we're in right now, there's a lot of benefits to it. People are sometimes more comfortable in their own space, and they actually share more, and we actually can read their body language, and we actually can get a sense of their emotional state. So we miss some of the things that we might get in person, but we gain other things. So we found that it's just as valuable to do because we now get to connect with people who we wouldn't otherwise connect with. But we also have very strict rules about cameras on, microphones this, stay in one place. Like, you really have to follow those rules so that we can get the most engagement. So, great question. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, Mike.
As you have mentioned the war, can facilitators be used to prevent wars that are going on today, especially in Russia and Ukraine?
I love that question, and I actually say to our facilitators that facilitators prevent war. And so what I mean is that when people actually take the time to when the different sides come together, what they find is that the sides are not as clear as we like to portray them. And once we don't have such clear sides and we have more ambiguity, more gray area, it's actually a lot. And we also meet people as people. Once we hear them and we see their gestures and they may smile or cry, it changes the game, because you can only go to war with something that you don't actually relate to, right? And so I do think that this, properly placed facilitation stops war and wars, because you don't start, it changes the game. So let me, just a quick example from, I know I'm going so fast, a quick and slow example is that at our university, just several hours ago, we had somebody who was invited to campus who is considered, how would I say it, Sam, in the simplest way? An agitator from an extremist group, okay, in the US. And our university said, we have free speech. This person is allowed to come to campus, and the best thing we can do if you don't like it is ignore it, right? You're not gonna make this thing a big event if you just don't go to it, right? Anyway, this students wound up making a big protest, and there's police and horses and pepper spray and all of these things, right? So war, in a very real way. And so they shut, the event was canceled. And this just happened a few hours ago. We got a notification on our phone. And for me, one side won that, right? They protested and they shut this down, and now they are victorious. But they didn't address the problem at all, and the problem will get worse, right? Because now you've committed some kind of violent, I use that word very lightly, response. You shut it down. It's not going away, right? But what if we just engaged? What if we sat down and we said, we want to hear you. What do you think? It would have changed. I mean, there wouldn't have been a war. There wouldn't have been a battle, but there was a battle, and it's not the end. It's just going to get bigger, right? So anyway, I think it's a perfect question, and I do think we have the power to stop war. Facilitators, yeah. But of course, political forces don't want us to do that. So there's all that. But I think that people coming together, and this is not romantic, because it's hard work. It's really hard work, and that's why you need a facilitator who is brave enough to stand in between people in conflict and let that air out and find, I don't want to say find common ground, but recognize the humanity and the decency in their different positions and views. So, love that question. Yeah, another question. And I know we're to end at noon, so we will be out at noon.
From what I've understood about facilitators, you were like somewhat empathy incitators as well, because I feel like you need to incite empathy to get to a common ground in everything. Mm-hmm. So I was gonna ask something very similar to that. Like, what if inside a group, inside a dialogue, there is one side that is actually harmful? Like, you're doing a very basic job, but one side defends like human rights, and the other side is like inflicting, not necessarily war, but just something that is not humane in some ways, something that is harmful. How do facilitators incite empathy to make a common ground in such in a divisive state, like a big division? How does that work?
Well, facilitators actually just hold the space for people to come together and talk and build the world together. And empathy happens. As soon as we are talking, I see you, you see me, and it's not easy to just not a little bit walk in your shoes and a little bit walk in my shoes. It happens without us trying. But what happens in social life is people don't come together, and they think they know things about other people because of what they read in the newspaper or what they saw on the street. That's not knowing people, and therefore there is no empathy. But when we sit together, empathy just happens. So that's why for us, empathy isn't a goal, because it happens whenever we bring people together. So in terms of things that are harmful, I'm very skeptical of that. I mean, it's a question that we get all the time, so I'm glad you're asking it. But what is harm is the question, and not everybody has to be in the dialogue, but people, let me start over. To me, it is more harmful to not address each other and not find out what you're thinking, you not knowing what I think or what I care about or what I value, than to worry about how I might feel if I hear something that hurts me or hurts my people or has always hurt, right? And I think there are people in every group that are capable of engaging for the benefit of everybody. And so we always say to our facilitators even, say we've had dialogues, we were addressing sexual assault, for example, and there have been women and men who have said, ooh, this is too close for me today or tonight or in my life right now. I actually can't facilitate that dialogue. That makes total sense because someone else can, right? And so we really have to see that it's not a zero-sum game, right? I need people. We just need to have enough opportunities that we're not letting issues become so separated that we only are seeing people from a distance because we're afraid of harm. Not everybody's going to be harmed by hearing things, and we need those people to be meeting each other, right? Because what we also know is that if I say that this person is my friend, or I like this person from this group, or I like people like you, my friends are more likely to like those people or my family because they trust me. So we just need to build those ripples, So that's a lot. I mean, your question again is so big, but that's the best I can say in a short period. Anything? Yeah.
I think I saw that the dialogue that there are people some people are shy or something can speak because they didn't come into the mind or something. But I want to say about responsibility because I just thought that the facilitator is like a leader, so it has a lot of responsibility because after the team project we have some GPA. But it is I know it is ability, but I just think that how did building the degree, how much is it being responsibility of a leader or best leader like you? So.
How much responsibility? Did you say in relation to other things that they're doing, or just I should comment on the responsibility? Let me do that, and then tell me if I'm answering. Okay? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I do think a facilitator in a group has a responsibility that is weighty. But the best facilitation is making sure that you're sharing the responsibility with the group. You're always taking your authority and leadership and sharing it with the group because you want them to have the power. And so if you're taking on the responsibility too much, you're probably not giving enough of it to the group themselves. So that's something that it takes time to learn, right? But that is, you're always trying to give the responsibility back. And facilitators are only one part of the dialogue. There's a whole staff of people that work with World in Conversation that are responsible for scheduling and logistics and technology and operations, all the things that are crucial to getting people into seats and facilitators scheduled to be with them. And so we really see that facilitators are only doing one part of it. We have to recruit people, we have to pick the right people, and there's so many other pieces that all together are sharing responsibility for making a dialogue happen. And I often forget to talk about all of that, but when I'm facilitating, I know that I'm only doing one part of the bringing people together. There's lots of other parts that are also responsible. So does that answer?
Yeah, right. Thank you. So I knew that the responsibility, like the not getting all of the responsibility of the leader and just figure out, like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like when you have the power, this is where power actually, let me just say, because we're always critiquing power, in the world because we see the corruption of power, but in a facilitator's world, you can see the ideal use of power. It's like I have the power so that I can give it back and help it to be used in the space to create the best outcomes, the most problem solving, the most equality between people. So it's a very interesting opportunity to look at power and how it can be used meaningfully and how it is used meaningfully. I want to actually give you all the chance to ask a question or a comment about what you're hearing from this perspective of sitting up here. Who wants to say something? I want to share the mic. Let's see. Who wants it? Do you want? Why don't you just say what you're noticing and what you're getting from sitting up here and hearing about this, no matter what it is. That was teamwork right there.
Yeah, I know other people have another perspective to see these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't think, well, can I eat it? Well, I can't think the question like, can I eat this or can how does it feel? Like I can't think, but I can know other people's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're saying I can't think of the things they would think of. I can only think of mine. But then I hear theirs, and then it shows you other things. Yeah, and which is just a simple thing to keep in mind when you're working together with other people. When you are together with other people, is wait, what do they think? Right? Just curiosity, more asking of each other to know each other, know what each other is thinking. Right? So is it your turn now? I think so. Just if you could, just say something that you're taking away from. Does that make sense? Something that you're going to be thinking about after this.
I agree to his opinion.
Say it again.
I agree to his opinion because I don't think I can easily to find it, but we cooperate and question and we make it a better question and better answer.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Let me see. So the idea is when you hear other people's questions, you actually can build on what they say and come to even another question or thought that you didn't have before that. That's perfect. In fact, do we have that slide? So this is what you're saying. So this is really quick, because I know we're going to end in a minute. This is an example of people in conflict, right? They have two different ideas about what they want to do and how they want to build it, but when they come together, what we want to see is then build something that either of them wouldn't have built on their own, right? So when someone else is asking the questions, it allows you maybe to come up with something you wouldn't have thought of before. And that's what I'm calling group thinking, and that's where we get smarter with other people. That's where the blind scholars come together and actually maybe eventually see that there's an elephant in front of them, right? Not just a tail or a tusk or an ear. And that's what we're trying to get to. So I'm going to finish up with so I want to share, for anybody who's interested and for some of you that may work with us, we have this book called Transforming Conflict and Collaboration, and it's the basic facilitation training. It's the first level in a very simple book that's written like a children's book for adults. You can read it in 45 minutes. It's easy to read. And we have it translated into Korean and some other languages too. So you just go on our website, worldinconversation.org/book, and you can read it there for free. So just wanted to let you know that. The Korean one, there is a version there, but it's being updated. So just know that in the next month, it'll be, in a better version will be available. So anyway, so that's for you, a resource to use and for us to share with you. And was there one more slide? Oh, we just wanted to show you, this is one of our dialogues. This was actually in the beginning of COVID, and you can see where people are coming from, Iraq and all kinds of places in the US, etc. But this is what a dialogue currently looks like. So hopefully we will see some of you, and even as facilitators someday. So we're going to end here. Thank you so much for your questions and for engaging. And again, hopefully, if you have questions, we'll be here afterwards. And thank you all for being up here with me to help me share all this cool stuff. And I have something for you, so don't leave. Okay?
And can you say what we're going to talk about at 3?
Oh, and at 3 o'clock, if anyone's interested, Sam and I are going to talk about how we're all teachers. We're going to talk about education, but how we're all teachers. And it's going to be fun and interesting. So come, or tell your friends to come. So thank you. Thank you for having me and us. And join us. Join us. All right. Enjoy your afternoon.